Okay, so this Todd Atkins, and I'm here with Dennis Kang, and Dennis, I want to thank you for taking time to do this, and maybe for if there's anyone out here listening to this who isn't familiar with you, maybe you could kind of introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, my name is Denis Kang. I used to compete professionally in MMA. I fought for a long time in Japan and Korea, most notably in Pride Bushido, K1 Heroes, Spirit MC, uh, Dream, and then later on in the UFC. And I had my last fight in 2012, and I still train, but I'm more of a coach. I don't compete anymore. So, yeah.
Now, when were you first introduced to like the idea of fighting? Was that something that you were looking at, or somebody approached you about doing it?
It's I mean, I've always been an athlete. I've always liked martial arts. So when I first saw the first UFC cassettes, in the late 90s, I was in high school still, and it's something that I just fell in love with. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I thought it was like Mortal Kombat or Bloodsport or something, right away, like the Kumite. And it's right away, I just loved it. I didn't want to do it right away because I was young. I was only like 16, 17, and all the fighters in the UFC were grown men, like in their late 20s or 30s or 40s. They were martial arts masters, basically, or competitors. So I didn't want to do it, but I loved learning about it and watching it, right? So I started to train a little bit more in traditional martial arts, and then a little bit more in BJJ later on. And when I became more serious, I was also getting, like in my early 20s and more confident with it. And a lot of my friends were telling me, oh, you should do it, and that's it.
So the first fight, like the first promotion you fought in, like I said, were you approached by them, or did you kind of try to make that happen yourself?
Oh no, I was trying to make it happen myself. I wanted to compete as soon as the competition. I gotta say, almost from the like before I even started, I kind of knew I wanted to do it in my subconscious, I guess I can say. But it wasn't until my friends kind of reaffirmed that that I could do it that I really wanted to, right? So, and then for the first fight, to get back to your question, it was a combination of myself telling my coach Marcus Suarez that I wanted to fight, and I think he was contacted by the promoter, and it was an underground fight. Actually, it was in 1998, so it was NHB. The word MMA didn't even exist, and so it was an event in like a warehouse. There was no gloves, obviously, and it was an event in a warehouse. And to get to the event, you had to call a pager number the day of, and they would call you back and ask you if you were a cop. You said no. You got the address. You got to go and watch the event.
And so, how did that turn out? Were there a lot of people there, or was it
There
relatively
was there
small?
was there was about 500 people, right? It was like a dingy little warehouse. The warm up room was one closet with a curtain in the middle. You had one corner on one side, the other corner on the other. Before my fight, I saw guys that had lost, and they were puking in the corner. It was very intense. I was fighting a guy who was trained by Maurice Smith, who was a very big deal at the time. So I was a little intimidated by my opponent's coach. And I hair pulling was allowed. So, and I had not long hair, but like normal kind of hair. I didn't have a shaved head, basically. And my friend told me, oh, you got hair. He's gonna be grabbing your head. He's gonna be hockey fighting you, only holding your head instead of your collar, holding your hair. So we put Vaseline in my hair to kind of make it slippery. So if someone did grab my hair, I would be able to yank my head out. And so I'm in the ring. I'm about to fight. The referee goes, "Are you ready?" And I go like this, just kind of, as a reflex to kind of brush my hair back, and I get Vaseline all in my hands. I tried to wipe it. The fight's about, and I didn't even get to worry about it. The fight started, but just kind of put into perspective the panic and the anxiety that was there. Every little thing seemed to be going wrong just before. It was pretty nerve wracking.
So after the first one, what were your thoughts coming away? As because you were saying you wanted to compete, so what did you take away from the first fight?
I loved it. I mean, I won in 15 seconds. Uh, One thing I remembered is how nervous I was. I mean, I kept thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? This is crazy. I hope it gets canceled. if the event gets canceled, I'll be happy. I won't have to do it, but I still did it. So, I knew that it was something that was, that was stressful, but the thought of never doing it again never occurred to me. The only time that I really thought about quitting the sport was when I lost a couple fights, later on in my career, where I had some tough losses. When you lose, in reflection, sometimes you think about hanging it up. So I went through that, but never because of the nerves or the fear, So I knew that it's something I loved, and I made a little money doing it. Nowadays people don't make money on their first fights because they got to fight amateur, but back then you just fought pro right away. Made $500, I think it was. I was happy. 15 seconds, I was 20 working in a call center. So that was good for me, right?
Right. So, as you're going on, did you still have some of those same fears before fights that you had then?
Oh, every time you have those fears. In fact, you probably have more fears as you progress and you make it to bigger fights because the stakes are that much higher. What does change, however, is the way that you deal with those fears, So, and I get that question a lot, by the way, and it's always my same answer. The fear is always there. You just get used to the fear. It's like, and I always use the dentist analogy. It's like when you're a kid and your parents take you to the dentist, you don't like it, you hate it, but they're like, hey, you got to go. Your parents are taking you. You can't, you got no choice. So you just kind of sit along for the ride and accept it. And it's the same thing with fighting. You're nervous. It's very stressful. You think about it all the time, butterflies in the stomach, but you signed on for the fight. Just accept it and go ahead,
So as you were getting more serious, when did you feel like, okay, this might be something that I'm going to try to do, maybe as a career, so to speak? I mean, no, back then it was harder to do that, but.
Right. I don't think there was a moment exactly like that. It's kind of something that I always loved it, and I always knew that I wanted to do it. I was just kind of living in the moment and just seeing what would happen. I can tell you that if you look at my record, especially, the first half, you'll see that, it wasn't, I won a couple fights right off the bat, and then I lost a few. And then at one point, I even had more losses than wins. So, there was some periods where I just had to think, like, do I really want to do this? Or, but it was more like, I got to keep doing it, even if I keep losing. And because it's the only, I'm only going to be young once, so I really wanted to give it my all for as long as I could, and then maybe retire down the line. I didn't want to stop it just because I'd lost and, and could still keep going. I wanted to keep doing it. And you know what, when I really started to stop focusing on trying to win is when I turned things around and I did start to win a lot more.
And when was that? When did you feel like you kind of started to turn a corner?
That was probably around 2003, right? It's when I fought a lot. And no, you know what? It was after I fought Jason Miller. Jason Mayhem Miller. I fought him in Salt Lake City, Utah on Extreme Challenge. I think it was like my second loss in a row. I was pretty bummed out. And I told myself, man, you know what? I keep losing. Maybe I'm not so good at this. Maybe I'm going to stop. I'm going to hang it up. I'm going to concentrate on jiu-jitsu or maybe get a real job. I don't know. But I had already signed for a fight 1 or 2 months away, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this last one, and then I'll quit. I'll never compete again. And I took this fight. I still trained for it. And because in my mind, I was already expecting to lose, and I thought that I was going to quit the sport right after, I ended up winning. I had way less stress, right? And then after that, I think I took a short notice fight with, Miguel Iriarte. Yeah, he gave me a short notice fight against Keith Rockell in Boston, and I won that by knockout. And then after that, I just kept winning. I fought in Superbrawl. I fought in Russia. I fought in Montreal, Quebec. Like, it was insane. I think I went 6-1 that year, which was pretty good, right? And that one loss was the first fight of the year. I won 6 in a row right after. So that was good.
Yeah, so I was in Hawaii for a long time. Like, what were some of your memories of fighting in Superbrawl? I think you won two fights that night.
Yeah. Oh man, it was so cool. I went down with my brother Tommy. We went down. It was just really cool to visit Hawaii. As soon as we got out of the hotel, like we landed at the airport, went to the hotel, we just went right in the water. It was so nice. Coming from Vancouver was it was very different. And then it was just cool to be part of like such a big event. There was a lot of up and comers in that event. There was Joe Dirksen. Uh, there was who else was in there? Justin Eilers was on the event. Yeah, it was Cabbage, Wesley Cabbage Carrera was on the event, I believe. It was cool. Matt Hughes was the referee. Two fights in one night was hard, man. The first fight, I won the fight by armbar, and in the second fight, I fought this guy named Kaipo Kalama, and I won a unanimous decision over him. But it was a tough fight, man. It was just rough back and forth. And then there was supposed to be a third fight, but I think I hurt my knee in that fight, and I couldn't keep going. But yeah, it was tough, man. Nowadays, the young fighters don't even know what it was like back then to fight in tournaments. Like two fights, three fights in one night I've done. It's hard. You get your adrenaline up, you win your fight, you go backstage, you got to calm down a little bit, then you got to go back out there again, injury or no injury. So it's tough.
So let's kind of talk about fighting in Japan, because I know you fought in Pancrase. You also fought in Pride. So Pancrase, were you fighting at a Crockwin Hall or?
Pancrase, there was one. The first time was at Yokohama. It was in Yokohama at a place called Yokohama Town Hall or something like that. Something like that. I don't know if I fought at Korakuen Hall. I always saw the name. I think I may have once. I think my second fight may have been at Korakuen Hall. And then, oh no, the second one was at the Budokan Hall, actually. The third one may have been at Korakuen Hall. I think it was, yeah. Yeah. But
So
yeah.
maybe for people who've never been there, I always kind of, that place is like a really special place in fighting, even though it's a real kind of a small venue. Maybe tell some people about that place as far as your memories of Karakwan Hall.
Korakuen Hall, man, it was, what I remember? I mean, it's your typical kind of Japanese arena, small, little bit old, but always very clean and efficient, and of course, everything's a little bit smaller and more crowded in Japan. And I just remember being like in, like the tunnel that goes into the arena. And there was writing on the wall, from like musicians and bands that had played there. And I'm waiting for my music to come out. I'm trying to get in the zone, and I look at the writing on the wall, and I see Tito Ortiz, blah blah blah. I think it's from when he fought Vanderlei Silva at UFC. And I was like, oh my God, this is the same arena where Tito fought. Like, it was just crazy to me, And I had a pretty good fight. I lost that fight, but it was a good fight. But still, that's definitely one of the cooler things.
So let's kind of talk about Pride. I mean, obviously, I know you knew what it was. When was that where you approached them? Did they approach you? How did that happen where you finally got in there?
Pride, I got in there because I was fighting in Korea for an event called Spirit MC, and I was the champion there, and they are the one who made the initial contact with Pride. And I had an agent there. I mean, I don't know if you know what it's like to fight in Japan. You can't directly contact the promotion. You have to go through a Japanese booking person. Not really a manager, because they don't manage you. It's more of a go-between, right? And my go-between in particular was this very colorful Japanese character that would go by Mr. Muruoka. And he was shorter, maybe in his 50s, always dressed very nice, fancy clothes. He had a missing pinky finger. And he was always with his wife or girlfriend, who was an older Japanese lady, smoking a very long, skinny cigarette. It was, they were two characters out of some 80s gangster movie or something. And he was nice. He was nice enough. He got me in there, but yeah, it was pretty interesting.
So what were some memories of fighting in that show particularly?
One of the coolest things was everybody remembers the music and Pride and those drums. They had a really cool sound system. And at the beginning of every Japanese event, be it Pride, K1, or whatever, they would have the fighter presentation. They line up all the fighters in the ring, and kind of, you know, introduce them to the crowd. And when they would get ready to do that, so they would play the music. All the crowd, you know, the crowd was there in the venue, and all the fighters were lined up backstage, waiting for their names to be called out, so they could walk out and get introduced to the crowd for the presentation. And just sitting back there, everybody can see each other, right? So you're going to see your next opponent for sure. Everybody's looking over, trying not to look over. Some guys are blatant, staring people down. You know, there's guys from Russia, Japan, America, everywhere, you know, and your coaches are not there. Remember, your coaches are like still in your locker room. This is fighters only. There's pipes, wires everywhere because it's backstage, right? It's not front stage. And you're just backstage there by yourselves with the music blaring, looking at everybody very tense. Some people are trying to get in the zone. And I just remember thinking that just taking like a couple seconds and really analyzing that moment, you know, how cool it was, just the electricity in the air because the music was so loud again, the Pride lady's voice, just announcing things and people's names, you know. It was really cool. I had Paulo Filio on one side just doing push-ups, Phil Baroni shadow boxing on the other side, Rio Chonan just kind of trying to do like little takedown moves, shadow box. It was really cool.
So what were some of your memorable fights? I mean, you fought everybody, I mean, over your career. What were some of your memorable fights in Pride?
In Pride? Well, you know what? My second fight in Pride was special because I got to Japan a little bit late, like only like a day or two before, because I lost my passport, so I had to get another one made, you know, really fast. So I got there a little bit late, and then I fought this guy named Andrei Semenov, who I'd fought already in his hometown of St. Petersburg, Russia, and I'd fought him to a draw, but I thought I'd won. But anyways, that's just how it goes. And then I rematched him in my second Pride fight, and early on in the fight, I broke my hand, and I ended up beating him by decision. It was just a hard fight. It was back and forth. At one point in the fight, he threw this big right hook, and he landed it right on my neck. Boom, just right here on it's the first and only time where I've been punched in the side of the neck, and it just kind of shook my whole body, you know. And I ended up winning by decision, but it was a really hard fight, you know, because of the, you know, the fast pace that we were kind of maintaining, and because I broke my hand as well. Another fight, again in Pride, was my last fight for that organization for Pride was the fight against Miyazaki. It was my second fight of the night, and I had a torn bicep. So it was a hard fight. That's the fight where really I had to give everything that I had in me. At one point in between the first and second round, I really thought that I was close to passing out, you know. But my coach Marcus Suarez and Liborio really pushed me on to keep on fighting.
Yeah, so let's kind of talk about that a little bit, because you mentioned like Liborio. When did you? Because I know you kind of switched camps, right? You were training at.
Well, I didn't switch camps. Marcus Suarez, I went down to South Florida to train an American top team because I didn't have that many training partners over here. But my coach, Marcus Suarez, who's my BJJ coach and kind of mentor, was always in my corner with me and always my coach. Yeah. So, and then while I was, when I went down there to American top team is when I started to get trained by Liborio as well.
Because that was when it was first formed. So maybe talk about that, because you're one of the first people that was there when that first started getting put together.
Yep, I went down there in 2004. It was really cool at the time. It was a big part of the team was Brazilian fighters, young up and coming Brazilian fighters from Brazil, who had a good base in martial arts, but were not really experienced in MMA. You know, so when I got down there, it automatically kind of made me one of the more experienced guys there, you know? So it was really cool. Also, I think the fact that I spoke a little bit of Portuguese, my coach was Brazilian, you know, I fit in really good. I got along with everybody right away, you know? And yeah, it was cool, man. At that time, you know, the science of MMA training was not as, you know, as expansive as it is now. We didn't know the things that we know now, especially when in regards to hard and light training. Basically, there was hard training and there was no training. There wasn't really anything in between, you know, and we would spar pretty hard. Not everybody had MMA gloves like we have now. So we would use these gloves at Liborio called Ninja gloves. And do you remember the Enter the Dragon movie where Bruce Lee is sparring MMA and he wears those big ass gloves with the fingers? They call them Jeet Kune Do gloves as well. We were wearing those to spar, and it would be full out, man, like hard sparring with grappling on the ground. And the MMA sparring sessions were called bloqueo. That's just, I don't know why the Brazilians called it that. And twice a week we would have bloqueo, and twice a week we would just go to war. And yeah, man, it was hard training. It was good. We had a lot of guys come there from all over the United States, guys from all over the world. We had Paul Daly coming in, guys from Japan. I remember Shannon Briggs and Zap Judah were doing their boxing training camps at the same time while we were there. It was really cool.
So, when you're training in a place like that where you have so many professionals, are there any downsides to that?
No, there's not really any downsides. There can be things that, of course you can, when you have opportunities like that, anybody can kind of squander them and not make the most of it. But it's up to you to kind of navigate that and take full advantage of the situation. I'll give you an example. Sometimes for jiu-jitsu specifically, for grappling, in my opinion, you need to sometimes roll or spar with guys that are smaller or a little bit of a lower level than you, just so you can open up your arsenal of submissions and whatever attacks you want to work on. That's because when you're always going with guys that are as good or better than you, you will not, the technical level is so high and so close, you guys just shut each other down. So it's basically whoever gets the first dominant position or move, and then the rest of the round, nothing can be done, because the person who got the dominant move is just so good and so dominant, he's not going to let go of that, And it's not really, it is who's better and who's worse a little bit, but it's mostly who's just lucky enough that day who get the better to get the better move first. You know what I mean? And it took me a while to realize that when I was, like, for example, at one point I was training with nothing but black belts, and I remembered, I'm like, man, I can't remember the last time I actually got an armbar on someone or just done a choke or a sweep, because it's basically whoever gets on top first, and then it just stays there, So that's when I really realized that I needed to train with lighter ranks, lower ranks, and that's when I started to open up and kind of smooth out my game a little bit.
Yeah, because I've always wondered that. I've talked to some people, like, why do you think there are a lot of fighters probably who've come into American Top Team or AKA or whatever the case may be that didn't pan out? So why do you think that was? Is it some of them need like individual?
Yeah, so that's a good point you bring up. When you're in a big establishment like American Top Team, you're kind of gonna be left on your own a little bit. And if you're a really introverted person who has a lot of talent, who just kind of shows up and trains, but then after training you just kind of leave and go home, you might just get lost in the mix, lost in the shuffle. You'll just be another body there. You kind of have to use your social and networking skills and talk to people, and kind of start training with different coaches there, so that because some coaches are not going to be proper for certain fighters just because of the personalities don't match up, the styles don't match up, so it's up to you to find that and to be proactive about it, and to also your sparring partners, and also to be noticed by the gym management, whoever your manager is, so you kind of have to be a little bit socially smart in structuring your training and planning how you just your coaching and things like that, because like you said, there's a lot of people who just don't pan out just because it could be anything. They could get injured, they could just not get along with the people on the team, they could just, like I said, they're just a little too quiet and just get forgotten and just be used as a sparring partner. It can be anything. So you have to get in there and kind of be smart and always be on the lookout. And you can't just put your head down and just train, That's what you should be doing, but also looking around you and trying to, to structure your training in a way that's going to advance your career.
So how did you know to make those adjustments? I mean, was that something that took some time for you to figure out when you were there? Or?
A little, not really. I mean, I was, it's pretty easy for me to make friends wherever I go. But I told you earlier, I speak a little bit of Portuguese, so it was pretty easy for me to get along with the guys there that were from Brazil. The coaches were, there's the late Howard Davis Jr. was there as a boxing coach, and I really got along with him. And I really feel like he took my game to the next level. He was a huge inspiration for me. And his son now is there at American Top Team Daya and working with the guys there. But yeah, and some coaches maybe they kind of don't fit with the way you train, and maybe you don't train with them anymore. But it's trial and error really. You got to remember, when I made it to American Top Team, I was already fairly experienced. I think I had maybe like 15, 20 fights already. So I knew how to train myself, right? I wasn't like a young guy just kind of starting, trying to figure things out. I had an established training protocol, so it wasn't hard for me to just get in there and do what I needed to do.
Okay, so let's kind of talk about you going into the UFC.
Yeah.
Maybe give your impressions of that, like first when it first happened,
Me fighting in the UFC?
or just the experience of getting called up to do that. I mean, you had already fought in Pride, which was as big as it got, but
Yeah.
maybe some of your impressions of the UFC at that time.
Sure. Well, so you got to remember, when I first signed with UFC, I was training in Montreal at the time at TriStar, right? I'd had some visa issues, and I couldn't enter the United States at the time. So, and I went back to Vancouver, which is where I am now. But at the time, so this is 2007 or 2008, I want to say. I couldn't really find a lot of people to train with me here. So I was proactive about it, and I went to Montreal to train at TriStar with Georges St Pierre, and I decided to move there. And that's around 2009 now, when I signed with UFC. And I mean, it was good. I always felt, I never really felt, I always felt a little rushed when I was with UFC. I don't know why. Like, I felt like when I was, as soon as I got there, I was like, okay, hurry up and go here, go to your hotel. Okay, hurry up and go there, cut weight. Okay, hurry up. Okay, go to the fight. Okay. And then, it just felt like it was a lot more hectic. Whereas in Japan, it just seemed like you had more time to relax, and to settle in. I never felt like I really got settled in with all three of my UFC fights. It was weird, So, but I mean, it's, I was also at a different part of my career. Pride, it was about 3-4 years earlier. I think I was a little bit more fresh, and in UFC, in retrospect, I think I was probably starting the twilight of my career, so to speak.
I want to ask you about training with GSP. Like especially today with Khabib, like a lot of people kind of splitting between him and GSP as maybe the best fighters the UFC ever had. Maybe tell me some about training with GSP. Some of the things that you remember training with him, or some of the things you felt he was really good at, and things like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you about when I first got to Montreal, and like George picked me up and stuff from the airport, and I stayed with him for a couple months, and we would train really hard. Same training that I would do, except we would go from gym to gym, right? Boxing to blah blah blah, and boxing to wrestling to MMA, and we would eat at restaurants every time, and it was things like submarine for lunch, pizza for dinner, hamburger for breakfast. Like, it was just fast food and just quick food every time. It was pretty funny. And we were both young at the time, so we could get away with it, and we didn't really know any better, I guess. That the whole thing of eating perfect and really clean, and, getting catered meals like people do now, and really paying attention to nutrition was not really a common thing. If you did that, you were like an outlier, like, oh, he's a health freak. Look at him. Like, he's fancy, Most fighters just ate, good, but that's it, like, not like super, with all the diets like now, it's a lot more refined. That's for sure now. So I just remember then it was kind of funny. If somebody saw what we ate back then, they would they'd be very surprised. I think it's very different now. And I always say there's only two. I always prided myself on training very hard and very disciplined. There's only two people that I ever trained with that train as hard or harder than me. One of those is a fighter by the name of Jesse Calvicante, JZ, another guy from American Top Team. And the other guy is Georges St Pierre, GSP, man. It was, we would do 2-a-days and pretty hard training each session. Usually it would be, 2-a-days, 5 days a week. And I had to take a break on so for example, 2 days on Monday, 2 sessions on Tuesday, 2 sessions on Wednesday, same thing Thursday, same thing Friday, Saturday, only 1 session. So we would start off doing that Monday, Tuesday, and on the Wednesday, there's no way I could do another 2-a-day. I had to take Wednesday off for 1 session. And George would go to every session very diligently. He was just very, very militant about it, And it's not to say that I wasn't disciplined about it, but I just felt like I needed a break earlier than he did, or my training would start to go downhill, So
what made him so special as far as, his greatness as a fighter? What do you think he attributed that to besides just his discipline?
I'll tell you one thing. George has an amazing ability to read timing and distance. And anybody who trains with him will tell you the same thing. Physically, he's a strong guy. He's very strong, speed, he's not that fast. He's explosive, slightly above average. But I felt like I was more explosive than him. That's one of the things that I was best at. Stamina, he's got very good stamina. He's got a very high work capacity, right? So he can last a long time. But I think that his best attribute was his eyesight and distance and timing management. He could read that split second where you were just about to throw the jab, time it so that he was shooting right under the extension of your jab at exactly the same time. And even sometimes just more like with strikes too, like sometimes it felt when I was sparring with him, I felt like I was completely across the cage from him. And then all of a sudden, boom, he was right in my face. It felt like he had teleported with a 1-2 right there. Like, it was, it's an uncanny ability to really just move on, make decisions on a split second, and I learned a lot from that, just on the importance of, it's not, basically I learned that it's not just about power or speed. It's also about reading that exact moment, the timing and the precision.
But when do you think he developed, because he kind of altered his style to where he was switching between the takedown, the stand-up, the takedown, the stand-up.
Right.
Do you know when he made that kind of adjustment, or?
What do you mean? You mean as opposed to before when he was more of a grappler?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think he always had that, he kind of always had it in him, but then his striking got better and he could mix it up more, I think is what it was, right? And basically, everybody's got a bit of a rhythm when they fight. So if you're punching, kicking, you land some shots, boom. Okay, in your mind, you want to do a takedown. So you stop a little bit, and then you go for the takedown, right? With him, he thinks a lot faster. So he punches, he kicks, you punch back, right away he's shooting. You know what I mean? It's he changes the style up on a whim. It's a lot more. You have to experience it to really understand it, but that's just how it feels, He because sometimes in very fast situations, it's not everybody can make that quick of a decision, right? I got good at it later on, just from seeing what should be done and what had to be done, by his example, right? But before that, I didn't really see anybody who moved like that,
And what about Faraz? I mean, you trained with him. He's obviously got a huge reputation. Maybe some things that you took away from Faraz, or your impressions of training with him and learning from him.
Yeah, Faraz was amazing, man. One of the best guys I've worked with for, especially for in the corner. Very, very nice, strategic, and calming mind in, during the fight. Faraz had a good approach to training, he he really didn't believe in hard training all the time, so it was a bit of a contrast with the training that I came from an American top team. He didn't believe in doing too much conditioning all the time, which is again something that I did a lot at, like those fight circuits, like CrossFit circuits all the time. He believed more in training, like, most of the time, like 90% of the time, it should be like drilling and like medium to light sparring, right? And hard sparring maybe once a week or closer to fight time so you don't get injured, and the conditioning, or like the really like the conditioning and weights and stuff like that should be saved for building attributes like strength, speed, explosiveness, endurance, and that should be off season when you don't have a fight. When you're in actual fight camp, your training time should be focused on building skills, right? Like boxing, kickboxing, technique, drilling, jujitsu, whatever it is you need, And it was a little different because I came from the school of train everything all the time, hard, and do conditioning. Just more of everything is better. It was a little bit more bro sciencey, I guess, so to speak.
So I wanted to ask you your impressions of some things you're seeing now. I mean, you're a big technician, and maybe ask you about maybe jujitsu and fighting. Jujitsu's changed a lot, especially like the no gi. You're seeing a lot more leg locking and stuff.
Yeah.
Even though it's been around forever, why do you think guys are having such a difficult time dealing with it now?
Well, it's leg attacks are hard to deal with to begin with, right? I mean, you got to remember, if somebody is way down on your legs, they're kind of away from you. So, I mean, just by that alone, it's hard, They're also not as fun to train. Well, some people love them, that's all they do, but it can be a little hard to train, because people are just a little bit more scared of it, or they panic a lot. So rather than work the defense or try to get out of it, they'll tap right away. Oh, okay, fine, which is not really the right thing to do. Although I understand why it happens. There are people who go a little too hard on the leg locks, so they kind of take the fun out of training. And people, it's no fun trying to defend a leg lock and then you get your ankle popped or your knee torn and then you can't train for a long time, right? So I get it. But at the same time, you got to train leg locks. You got to, even if you don't use it, like I tell my students, even if you don't like this move and you'll never use it, you need to practice it, because knowing your enemy is beating your enemy, right? You have to understand how to deal with it if it's done on you. And yeah, I think now there's a big fear of leg locks, less of course, because now with, the popularity of leg attacks and, from the John Danaher and stuff like that, a lot of people are training that specifically, but there's still a big of, a misunderstanding towards leg attacks.
But why do you think they were able to make it so effective, like Danaher and his guys?
Oh, well, I mean, they focus. John Danaher came to train with us at TriStar. Well, not to train to train George specifically, and I was there and stuff like that. So I got to train with him early on, and he really has a very like here's how it is for jiu-jitsu, especially. Jiu-jitsu came from Brazil, where the best coaches were from Brazil and didn't necessarily have a super descriptive way of teaching jiu-jitsu moves, right? Especially with the language barrier. So it was more like, take your hand here, put it there to do that move with the hand on the shoulder, Whereas with John Danaher, he refined the way that you teach certain moves and the concepts behind it. Why do you put this hand here to block the leg and to keep pressure on the hip so that you can dominate his position, stop him from move, and get more leverage. Like it was basically the hows and the whys of each move and the science. And it was almost like, I call it like body engineering, there's a lot of physics behind it. So he basically put a structure to the way that you teach jiu-jitsu. It's a lot easier to learn. And that's why his students have benefited from basically just an easier way of learning jiu-jitsu, in my opinion. I think John Danaher and Eddie Bravo basically revolutionized the way that people teach and train jiu-jitsu. Eddie Bravo more so with giving names to moves, which are a lot easier to remember, right? Like with his 10th planet system, his rubber guard and all that stuff. Before there was like 10 different moves, 10 different names for every move, somebody called it something here, somebody called it something else at this gym, with Eddie Bravo, everything was kind of codified and classified in one concise system, and it was a lot easier to remember and learn, right? John Danaher did the same thing. He put in Japanese names, but he took it a step further, and he really, really went into detail with the science of why certain moves work, Why do you know an armbar? Why do you keep your legs tight? Why, kind of the same stuff that I brought up before. And I think it made a huge difference with those guys. Like if you see now guys like Gordon Ryan teaching in his videos, like he describes moves like John Danaher, very concise, very technical, but still easy to understand. And it's that approach, I think, that really made people better at jiu-jitsu, especially leg attacks,
Now, as far as with fighting in the UFC and stuff, have you been paying a lot of attention to it still or no?
Oh, of course, all the time. I try to watch every event. I didn't watch last night. I heard about what happened with RDA and Felder, but no, I try to watch. Man, I mean, this is all I do, man. MMA, boxing, fighting, whatever, everything. That's all I do. So yeah, I'm still in touch.
So, I wanted to ask you about like Khabib, because I know he was being compared to St. Pierre. And, why is it that these Dagestani wrestlers, some of them, him in particular, are able to make the wrestling so much more effective than a lot of the American fighters today are getting the takedown, lose the takedown. Maybe they get another, lose it again. Because RDA did that a lot last night.
Yeah.
Takedown, lose the takedown, do it over again, kind of mix it up.
Yeah.
But not dominate the position.
No. It's I don't know. That's a tough one because I mean I want to say that guys like Khabib have the Sambo background, but I mean RDA has a big jiu-jitsu background. I trained at the same gym as RDA in 2009. When I was in UFC, he wasn't in UFC yet. I trained at the same gym as him, and I saw him training, and he has top-notch jiu-jitsu. So it's definitely not because of that. I think just the whole mentality. Like I'll tell you one thing: in Canada, the fighters from Quebec, any sport, any competitive sport that's organized in Canada, like hockey, whatever, boxing, whatever, everybody knows the fighters, the competitors from Quebec are just tough. Even if they're not that competitive, that skilled, they're going to be super competitive and super tough, right? And I think it's kind of comparative to the way the Dagestani fighters are. They all have different levels. Some are better than others, but they're all going to be very hard mentally, and very competitive. And I think it's probably because of the country they come from. I don't really know what Dagestani's like, but it's probably a little bit a harder life than what we're used to over here, North America or Europe, and it's I think the fact that they're doing wrestling from a very young age, right? Khabib was wrestling bears growing up, apparently. So, maybe that's that. But I think it's just a combination of those things. Just a hard overall, nationalistic mentality, and just putting their kids into wrestling from a very young age.
Now, the sport has changed a lot as far as like the mentality in the UFC. And the early UFC there's probably a lot more respect. There's a couple of fighters, Tank, Tito, like that weren't necessarily like that, but it's almost become more the norm now. So what are your impressions of what you see in the UFC now compared to when you were fighting?
Well, I mean, of course, now, people are the training is way better. Back then, if you were in the UFC, you were a little bit older, right? You didn't see that many young guys. The first young guys to be in the UFC were Vitor Belfort and Jerry Bollander. That's why I was big fans of them, because they were my age, right? I think Bollander was 21 and Vitor was 19. Everybody else was like in their 30s or, a martial arts master, an old kickboxing champion or something, Now you got guys who've been training since they were born pretty much, right? You got guys coming in with huge karate background, huge wrestling backgrounds. You know, people know how to train way better. A lot more mistakes have been made basically by previous generations of fighters, and the new fighters are learning from that and building on it and inventing new things. You know, I mean, the style is almost changing every week. You know, you just need someone to do a crazy move in UFC, and then next week everybody's doing it in practice. You know, and then people are getting better and better at it. You know, I mean, like for example, the thing that Khabib does, the Dagestani handcuff, the way he traps the wrist from behind, you know, on the ground, like everybody's doing that in practice now. My guys, I'm always calling for them to do that. And it really is a legit good move. And it's not something that we didn't know before. Like it's an old wrestling trick, trapping the wrist, right? It's just, but it's a lot more prevalent now. And just because it's been reinforced through the UFC platform, right? We see it more and more, and we see it's, you know, how effective it is. So we just call it out, right? So it's just every time that a new move is there, you know, and we also get more UFCs now, right? So we'll get a lot more chance to analyze fights and learn the sport. So just everything in general, you know, the training, the amount of fights we get, the quality of coaches. We have a lot more coaches like myself now who were fighters, who have fought, and who love to train, right? Most of the coaches before had never fought. They were just guys who were good at coaching and had a martial art background, right? Whether it was wrestling, maybe a bit of boxing if you were lucky, right? Now, like, I love coaching now, and I could coach you in anything: wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, MMA, right? Conditioning, whatever you want, you know, and I have fight experience. So it's just a whole new generation of people.
But do you think, you know, because they have so many events, a lot of guys are a lot less experienced? Do you think?
Well, right
You're
now it's
right. They
kind
are
of
better
tough.
fighters, but I think a lot of them are a lot less experienced than some guys
You're,
that have come in.
you're right. You're right. But to be fair, right now, this year specifically because of COVID, there are a lot less events, right? So the UFC is putting on more events, and they have to take guys. They have to make a bit of a compromise, right? Because they're gonna run out of fighters. Like if they never took on any more fighters for like another year, all their current roster would be burnt out because people can't fight that much. So they have no choice but to take guys that are a little bit less experienced, but so they can refresh their roster, you know. And it is what it is. Like right now, people don't have a chance to really get experience. There are some regional shows happening, but not that many. You know, like I've here in Vancouver, we haven't had any MMA since February, right? My guys have been training all year with nothing, right? It's crazy. So yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your gym, the gym you're operating now.
Um, so my training group is called DK MMA, but I train out of a gym called World Champion Gym in Richmond, Vancouver. And yeah, I have a bunch of guys. We train hard. I train them hard in everything, and that's it, man. I have a couple standouts. I have a bunch of middleweights and welterweights uh, that you'll be hearing from very soon. You know, that are doing really well in the regional circuit, the local circuit here, and that I want to take to the next level. You know, and I train them hard. Um, you know, there's a bunch of good gyms in the city. You know, the whole level of Canadian MMA is raising as a whole. So it's nice to see.
Why did Canada become kind of such a hot spot? You know, because I think it has that kind of reputation, even as a viewerships for MMA, but also as maybe as a popularity for people that wanted to get better.
Right. I don't know. It's I mean, I'll catch flack for saying this, you know, but I think overall the culture in Canada is not too different from the United States. You know, we're side by side. We watch the same TV. We have the same media. You know, it's so. I mean, it's you know, the USA is getting good. Canada is going to be good as well. Um, yeah.
Because I mean, there were important spots for the sport in the early years, like Southern California,
Yeah.
Hawaii to some extent.
Oh, right. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, in Canada, it was Montreal, right? And like I said, I think the mentality is just a little bit tougher in Quebec. You know, you see it for other sports as well. But when I got to Montreal, man, it was like, wow, like this is totally different than Vancouver or other cities in Canada. You know, it's this. First of all, the sport was a little bit more accepted. You know, I think the people in Quebec, you know what Quebec, they speak French, right? Yeah. So it's I think they've always felt a little bit, you know, like outsiders, so it makes you a little bit tougher, you know. And the sport of MMA has always had a little bit of an outsider complex. Maybe not now. Now it's a little bit more accepted, but definitely up to at least like maybe 10, 15 years ago, you know. So in Quebec, they're used to you know, to being a little bit on the fringes, and it makes you a little bit tougher. And when you do something that it's not that accepted, if you're if you're in Vancouver, for example, and you're doing something that's like MMA that's not that accepted, it can hold you back, because even though you love what you're doing, you always have that little doubt in the back of your mind. Oh, am I doing something that's kind of stupid, you know? But if you're already from a place where you're kind of used to having hardship and being on the outside, when you do something that's already deemed maybe not you know, not as you know, as accepted like MMA, you're going to go in it fully, because you're just, you know, you already have that kind of that tough mentality, right? So, you know.
So, who are some of the fighters you're paying attention to in the UFC now, or that you like to watch or think are good?
Right now, I really like Giga Chikadze is really good. Who else? Jack Hermanson, really like his style. Um, I think Justin Gaethje needs to get back on track. I really think he was doing good. And yeah, man, I think the guy right now is that guy Giga for striking. Anyways, we'll see how he develops. You know, he's gonna be good.
But maybe like some of the fighters who are more famous, like Adesanya or McGregor. What are your impressions of some of those guys?
Oh yeah, well I think Adesanya, honestly, on middleweight, I don't know anybody that's gonna beat him. I think he's just too big, too strong. Like the fight against Paulo Costa, that's what I was calling right like the whole time. You know, I just knew that Costa did not have the style to beat Adesanya. To beat the thing is, Adesanya is basically like a bigger, better version of Anderson Silva. And what Anderson Silva was basically an adult fighting children because of his size, right? He was huge, long reach, and he knew how to use it. Everybody was super short. He had really good timing, really good reading of distance, and he could use that to his advantage for striking, you know. And now people are kind of moving like that. But Adesanya is like that, like Anderson Silva, but on a way better level, you know, because he had that kickboxing background, and he's got really good, not really good, but a good understanding of wrestling and anti-grappling, right? So he's going to be hard to beat. I don't see too many people giving him a lot of trouble right now. It's going to have to be someone that's either really good on the ground and wrestling, or someone that knows that's the same size as him, and or that knows how to get in on the inside range, you know. And right now there's nobody really at middleweight anyways. I think didn't he say he was moving up to light heavyweight?
Yeah, I know he was going to fight the champion at
Yeah, the
light
champ.
heavyweight.
That's right, the Polish guy, right? So, and you know, like, I mean, we all know nobody really expected him, Jan Blachowicz, right? Nobody really, and he's good. I like that guy. A lot of people didn't expect him to win. I think a lot of people don't respect him and don't and underestimate him. And I'm pretty sure that's why Adesanya is so adamant to move up in weight right away. He thinks it's an easy fight. I don't think it's going to be that easy, you know. You know, I don't think Blachowicz is a John Jones, but he's no slouch either. You know, he's good, man. He can hit, you know, and he's got that confidence now from that win over over what's his name? Who did he just beat for the title? Fill me in.
Oh man, I'm trying to. Was it Gustafson?
Uh,
No, it was oh man. Oh,
Anyway, so
yeah,
we
yeah,
have
Reyes.
oh yeah, Dominic Reyes. That's right, right. Yeah. So he's good. He's good, man. He'll. I think I don't know if him and Adesanya. It'll be a good fight. It'll be a good fight for sure. Because finally, Adesanya is fighting somebody that's a little bit more his size. So it'll be tough. What I'm curious to see is what will happen with Jones at heavyweight, right? Because now it's different. He'll have guys his size, and power will be and guys who hit a lot harder, and Jones won't hit as hard at heavyweights, right? Like everything is diminished, right? Everything's on a more even scale. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. Because again, John Jones had that reach and height factor going in, right? Anytime you have someone that's that much bigger, with the skills to back it up, they will win. They just have more leverage. Gravity works with you, so that's just how it is.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting too. Plus, Jones, look, he was having some tougher fighters at light heavyweight recently.
He
The
was.
Reyes fight was tough. The Silva
Yeah.
fight was tough.
Well, but he was still winning them. Like what people don't understand is every time someone has a tough fight, they think, "Oh, he didn't look good against so and so." Well, I mean, it's a fight. The guy's not coming to lay down. If he looks too good, then people say he's fighting nobody. Like he didn't look, or I don't want to say he didn't look good. He had a hard fight. The other guy did really well, had his own moments, but Jones still came out on top. Some of them were questionable, but I think Jones is a great champion. He has the skills. He's strategically, I think he's good, and he has that mental toughness to get hit and come back. It's those are all the skills that you want in a fighter. You want that mental toughness, you want that athletic ability, and you want that real technical kind of skill, right? He has all that. The only thing that gets in the way of John Jones is John Jones with his personal choices outside the cage, but that's a whole other thing, right? But yeah, no, John Jones cleaned out that division, man. There was I don't blame him going up in heavyweight. In fact, I think I commend him on it. I think he's taken the harder approach, in my opinion, by going to heavyweight. It's not going to be easy for sure.
Now, as we're kind of winding down the interview, I was wondering if there's anything you wanted to leave people that were listening to this interview or things you might be doing. I know you're showing a lot of technique on your Instagram, and you kind of showed Khabib's setup to the triangle, things like that. What are some things that you're doing and maybe people might want to check out?
Just follow me on social media, on Instagram, at This is Denis Kang, on TikTok, Denis Kang MMA, Twitter, same thing, at Denis Kang. I'm pretty easy to find on social media. I'm just trying to spread MMA, make people's lives better through fitness and MMA, whether it's jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing. I really think that mixed martial arts can change people's lives, whether it's through competition or just training as a hobby. I mean, everybody knows the health benefits of martial arts. And even if it's a little bit more for the mental aspect, we all know mental health is a big topic nowadays. Martial arts and fitness can definitely help bring mental clarity to people. So if anybody's interested in that, just hit me up or watch my social media. And that's it, man. If you're a fan, just reach out and say what's up. I try to respond to every single message that I get, and there is a lot, but I really try. And so far, I've hit like a 99% response rate. So let's see if I can keep it up.
Well, again, Dennis, I want to say thank you for taking time to do this, and hopefully I can catch up with you again sometime, maybe a post event or something, if you wanted to talk some of the fights.
Oh, sure. I would love to, Todd. Yeah. Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor.
Yeah. All right, man. I appreciate it, and take care. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, my friend. Keep in touch.
Appreciate
Bye.
it.